Ambassador Elias Carter stepped into the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, his boots echoing across the polished obsidian floor. The chamber, a vast dome of shimmering metal and translucent alloys, hovered in the cold void of space, an architectural wonder that symbolized unity among hundreds of interstellar civilizations. Each delegation sat in their designated sections, their environmental needs carefully maintained by the Council's advanced technology. The air hummed with whispered conversations, murmurs of speculation, and the quiet rustling of robes, exoskeletal plates, or whatever attire different species deemed formal. Today's meeting was expected to be routine, another session in the ongoing discussions about the rising tensions between the United Systems of Earth U's and the Zarkari Dominion. Humanity had been expanding peacefully, integrating into the greater galactic community with careful diplomacy and measured military presence. Yet the Zarkari, one of the most warlike and expansionist empires, had begun to push into U's claimed territories. Skirmishes had erupted along their borders, though the Zarkari dismissed them as misunderstandings, blaming rogue commanders or pirates. Carter had attended these sessions before, always keeping his voice level, his expressions neutral. Diplomacy required patience, and humanity had exercised it well. But today, there was no patience left. He stepped into the central speaking circle, a raised platform where representatives made their declarations. The murmur in the chamber quieted as he approached, his posture uncharacteristically rigid. He placed a small metallic device on the podium before him and pressed a button. A blue light flickered to life, projecting a hologram into the vast chamber. At first, the image was blurred, static and distortion rippling through the footage. Then it sharpened, revealing the shattered remains of city. Skyscrapers reduced to skeletal ruins, streets littered with debris and bodies, the sky darkened by the lingering smoke of orbital bombardment. The atmosphere in the chamber shifted. Representatives leaned forward, some adjusting their translators to ensure they were understanding correctly. Elias Carter's voice was like steel. "You attacked our home." A silence, heavy and absolute, fell over the chamber. Even species that thrived on chaos and war stilled the gravity of the accusation. The Zarkari delegation sat in their usual place, a cluster of imposing figures clad in deep crimson armor. At the center of their group stood High Lord Zelvader, the Zarkari's representative to the council. He was a towering figure, his scaled hide a deep obsidian, his predatory eyes a burning amber. He did not flinch at Carter's words, though his clawed fingers tapped against the armrest of his seat. Carter let the silence linger before he continued. The hologram shifted, showing the attack in real time. Zarkari warships descending from the void, unleashing torrent of plasma upon Elysium for a thriving human colony. The city defenses barely had time to respond before they were overwhelmed. Civilians ran through the streets, some caught in explosions that turned them into little more than ash and vapor. Millions had lived there. Now they were gone. Carter turned his gaze to Zelvader. "Do you deny it?" The Zarkari High Lord exhaled, a low hissing sound that might have been amusement. He stood, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's soft luminescence. "You humans have a habit of dramatizing events," Zelvader said, his voice deep and guttural. "There were border conflicts, yes, perhaps some unfortunate collateral damage." His sharp teeth flashed in what might have been a grin. "But an attack on your home? Do not be so quick to claim victimhood. Human." Carter's jaw tightened. He had expected denial, but not with such ease, such blatant disregard for the evidence displayed before them. He switched the hologram again. This time, it showed intercepted Zarkari communications, strategic discussions between fleet commanders, confirming the order to raise the colony. The words were clear: leave none alive. Let them remember their place. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even the more neutral factions of the council shifted uncomfortably. Councilor Ritvier, a being of iridescent blue with delicate, flowing tendrils, raised a hand. "High Lord Zelvader, these transmissions, are they false?" Zelvader tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Human deception is known to be—" Carter cut him off. "Do not insult our intelligence. High Lord, the evidence is undeniable." His voice rose, anger barely restrained. "Elysium, for it was not a border outpost. It was not a military stronghold. It was a peaceful colony, home to 20 million innocent lives. You did not strike at a strategic target. You committed genocide. The chamber erupted into noise. Delegates shouted over one another, some condemning the Zarkari, others wary of what this meant for galactic stability. War had erupted in the galaxy before, but never between two established members of the Council. If the Zarkari had truly attacked a core world, it was an unprecedented breach of the Council's laws. Zelvado's smirk finally faded. His posture straightened, his fingers curling into his palms. "And what do you intend to do about it, human?" The words were a challenge. The entire chamber knew it. Carter exhaled slowly. His next words had determined everything. He pressed another button on the podium, and a new image appeared. A live feed from a human warship. Zarkari outposts along the Elysium sector, once formidable, were now burning wrecks. 2 hours ago, humanity had already retaliated. Carter looked at Zelvader, his expression cold and unwavering. "We are not here to ask for justice. We are here to deliver it." Zelvader's eyes narrowed. For the first time, there was uncertainty in them. And for the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council realized that humanity was not a species to be trifled with. High Lord Zelvader's golden eyes flickered in the dim light of the Galactic Council chamber, but his expression remained unreadable. His scaled fingers drummed against the armrest of his chair, slow and deliberate, the only sign of his irritation. He was no fool. He had expected humanity to protest. He had anticipated their outrage, their speeches about morality, their weak appeals to the laws of the Council. But what he had not expected was the sheer audacity of their response. Retaliation. Immediate, precise, and devastating. The humans had not hesitated. Their fleets had already struck back, dismantling Zarkari forward outposts, burning their supply lines before the Council had even convened to discuss the matter. That was not the behavior of prey. It was the act of a predator. Still, Zelvader was not concerned. Not yet. He rose to his feet, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the chamber. His voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the hall. "You humans are quick to make accusations." His lips curled slightly, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "A colony on the fringes of your space suffers an unfortunate fate, and you bring your grievances before the entire Council, as if the universe should bend to your suffering." Ambassador Elias Carter did not move. His blue eyes remained locked onto Zelvader's, cold and unwavering. "Unfortunate fate?" he repeated, his voice dangerously low. 20 million civilians were turned to ash by your warships. That is not unfortunate. It is a war crime. Zelvader exhaled sharply, the sound reminiscent of a predator's amusement. "You humans are still new to the stars. You do not yet understand how wars are fought." He turned, addressing the entire assembly now. "The Zarkari Dominion has always expanded through conquest. It is our way. It is the way of strength." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some species, particularly those with a history of warlike traditions, nodded in silent agreement. The strong took from the weak. That was the way of many civilizations before they had joined the Council. Zelvader continued, gesturing toward the hologram of the destroyed human colony, still flickering above the Council floor. "Yes, our fleets engaged a human settlement, but let us not pretend that this was a homeworld. Elysium, for it was a colony, an extension of your grasping expansion. It was built upon land that was not yours to take. Did you expect that the Dominion would simply allow you to creep ever closer to our territory unchecked?" Counselor Ritvier, the Kethri elder, raised a delicate hand. Her translucent skin shimmered under the artificial lights, her gossamer-like tendrils shifting with unease. "High Lord Zelvader, the United Systems of Earth had claimed Elysium, for in accordance with Council law. The planet was registered, its settlements sanctioned. By all legal definitions, it was theirs." Zelvader turned his gaze toward her, his expression unreadable. "The Council's laws do not govern the Zarkari Dominion. We abide by the laws of nature, and nature favors the strong." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. The Council had always maintained a fragile balance of power, relying on diplomacy and mutual agreements to prevent full-scale wars. The Zarqari's outright rejection of those principles was not unexpected, but to declare it so openly was bold, even for them. Carter took a step forward. "So you admit it, then?" His voice was quiet, but it carried an undeniable weight. "You ordered the attack." Zelvader's slitted pupils narrowed. "We do not need to admit what is already evident." Carter's fingers curled into fists. He had dealt with the Zarqari before, had seen their arrogance, their unwavering belief in their own superiority. But this was beyond arrogance. This was a challenge. He turned toward the council, addressing the gathered representatives. "This is not just an attack on humanity. This is an attack on the very foundations of this council." He gestured toward the hologram again, letting the images speak for themselves. "The Zarqari believe they are above our laws, that they can raise entire worlds without consequence. If we allow this, what stops them from doing it again? From doing it to your worlds?" A hushed silence fell over the chamber. Many of the council members were from species that had once been on the receiving end of the Zarqari's conquests. They had joined the council seeking protection, stability, a promise that diplomacy could hold power over brute force. Counselor Jorik, a reptilian Vornak with hardened scales the color of deep emerald, leaned forward. His species had once warred with the Zarqari, centuries before the council had formed. His voice was rough, weathered. "High Lord Zelvader, I warn you, this path leads to war. The council does not intervene lightly, but if you continue on this course, you may find yourselves outnumbered." Zelvader's golden eyes flicked toward Jorik, his smirk returning. "War? Against whom?" He let his gaze drift across the chamber, scanning the gathered representatives. "You all sit here in your comfortable halls, pretending that peace is the natural state of the universe. It is not." He gestured to Carter. "These humans understand this better than most. They built their civilization through conflict, just as we have. The difference is they are pretending they no longer have a stomach for it." Carter's expression did not change, but inside, something dark and ancient stirred within him. He had spent years advocating for peace, for diplomacy. He had fought to establish humanity's place in the galaxy as something more than a species of warriors. But the truth was, the Zarqari were right about one thing. Humanity had not forgotten war. Carter stepped forward once more, his voice steady, unshaken. "You think we are weak," he said, his words slow and deliberate. "You believe that we will sit idly by while you burn our worlds, that we will cower before your fleets." He shook his head. "You do not understand us." Zelvader sneered. "Enlighten me." Carter pressed another button on his podium. A new image replaced the hologram of the destroyed colony. This time, it was not a recording. It was a live feed. The Zarqari outposts along the Elysium sector, once considered impenetrable strongholds, were now reduced to smoldering wrecks. Human warships moved methodically, dismantling Zarqari defenses with brutal efficiency. The image shifted, displaying a burning Zarqari dreadnought, its wreckage drifting lifelessly through space. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even Zelvader's expression flickered, a brief hesitation passing through his features before he quickly masked it. Carter did not smile. There was nothing to be pleased about. His next words were simple, but they carried the weight of humanity's wrath. "We are not here to ask for justice. We are here to deliver it." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some council members called for immediate intervention. Others demanded negotiations, but the Zarqari delegation remained eerily silent. Zelvader stared at the screen, his claws tightening against the armrest of his chair. For the first time in his life, he had underestimated an enemy, and for the first time, he realized that humanity was not a species to be trifled with. The Galactic Council chamber was no longer a place of reasoned debate. It had become a battlefield of words, accusations, and rising tension. The moment Elias Carter had revealed the live footage of humanity's retaliation, the chamber had erupted into chaos. Some delegations shouted in alarm, others in protest, while more warlike species watched in fascinated silence. High Lord Zelvader had not moved since the images of his burning outposts had flickered to life. His golden eyes remained locked onto the screen, absorbing the destruction with an expression that was difficult to read. Elias Carter stood firm, his face betraying nothing. He had said what needed to be said. Now, the galaxy would have to decide how it would respond. Counselor Rivier's soft voice rose above the noise, attempting to restore order. Please, representatives, we must remain composed. We are here to prevent war, not escalate it further. Zelvader finally stirred. He exhaled a slow and deliberate sound, before turning his gaze back to Carter. You act quickly, Ambassador, he said, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance. I underestimated your kind. Carter met his gaze. Yes, you did. A murmur spread through the chamber. The Zarkari Dominion had never admitted to underestimating an enemy before. It was a subtle but significant shift. Counselor Jorik, the reptilian Vornak, narrowed his yellow eyes. High Lord, you have now seen the cost of your aggression. The United Systems of Earth has made it clear they will not stand down. Do you still insist that your actions were justified? Zelvader's gaze swept across the room, measuring the reactions of the gathered species. His people had always relied on brute strength to dominate the galactic stage. But now, the Council was no longer looking at the Zarkari with fear. They were looking at the humans, and that, more than anything, was dangerous. He straightened his posture, adopting the demeanor of a warrior preparing to make a calculated retreat. You mistake me, Counselor Jorik. We do not seek endless war. We seek dominance, as all great civilizations do. His gaze flicked back to Carter. But now, I see that humanity does not cower when faced with power. That is rare. Carter's voice remained steady. You talk of dominance, but what you fail to understand is that humanity does not seek conquest. We do not fight for expansion. We fight to protect what is ours. He gestured toward the screen. Elysium, for it was not a military installation. It was not a border outpost. It was a home, and you turned it to ash. Zelvader did not deny it this time. He simply listened. Carter took a step forward. The war you started has already begun. You assumed we would beg this council for intervention, that we would weep and demand sanctions while you continue to strike at us from the shadows. He shook his head. But humanity is not a species that waits for justice to be given. We take it. The chamber was silent now. Carter turned, addressing the council at large. We did not come here today to seek approval for our actions. The time for diplomacy passed when the first Zarkari ship opened fire on our people. We are here to ensure that the rest of you understand exactly what is happening. He let his gaze sweep over the gathered representatives. The United Systems of Earth are at war, and we will see it through to the end. A shiver ran through the room. The declaration was final. Counselor Riviere clasped her delicate hands together, her translucent skin dimming as she spoke. Ambassador Carter, surely there is still room for peace. Carter turned to her, his voice softer but no less resolute. There was a time for peace. It ended the moment 20 million innocent people were slaughtered. Zelvader watched him closely. There was no bravado in Carter's tone, no arrogance, just the cold certainty of a species that had made its decision. And for the first time, the Zarkari warlord wondered if they had made a mistake. Another representative, a being with shimmering exoskeleton from the Orvani Consortium, spoke up. If this war continues, it will spread beyond your two nations. The galaxy cannot afford another great conflict. Carter nodded. Then make your choice. The Council has the power to act. Will you hold the Zarkari accountable? Or will you stand aside and watch as we finish what they started? Eyes turned back to Zelvader. For all his posturing, the Zarkari leader was now in a dangerous position. The Council could not afford to support him outright, not when the evidence of his actions was so damning. And if they abandoned him, the Dominion would be forced to fight humanity alone. Zelvader exhaled once more, this time in something that almost resembled respect. You are more formidable than I expected, human. His golden eyes burned with something unreadable. This war will not be as simple as you believe. Carter's expression remained unchanged. We never expected it to be simple. Zelvader glanced at his aides, then back at the Council. The Zarkari Dominion will not kneel. Carter's response was immediate. Good. Neither will we. For a long moment, the two leaders stood in silence, measuring one another. Then Zelvader gave a slow nod, as if accepting the inevitable, without another word. He turned and strode from the chamber, his entourage following closely behind. The silence that followed his departure was thick with tension. The war had been inevitable from the moment the first shot was fired. Now it was simply acknowledged. Counselor Rithvier's voice was almost a whisper. This is the beginning of something terrible. Carter did not respond. He simply turned and left, following the path that had already been set in motion. Humanity had made its decision. Now, the galaxy would see what it meant to stand against them.